Okay, excellent. Well, we're very fortunate to have Bridget Brennan with us today. And before I say anything about Bridget as far as her bio is concerned, Bridget, of course, is an Aggie. And it's awesome to at least virtually welcome you back to Aggie Land. We'll get you back here soon.
Please, COVID passed so I can come visit College Station.
Absolutely. We're going to all have to hit a football game together.
Would love it.
Excellent. All right. Well, let me go ahead and introduce Bridget. Bridget Brennan is the world's leading authority on women consumers. She is the founder and CEO of the Chicago-based advisory firm Female Factor and author of 2 best-selling books. Her first book, Why She Buys, was called Essential Reading by the Wall Street Journal. Her new book, Winning Her Business, was nominated for 2019 Business Book of the Year. Bridget works with Fortune 500 companies around the world and writes about marketing to women for Forbes.com. She was named a woman to watch in retail disruption and is a proud member of the Minnesota Vikings Women's Advisory Board. A sought-after speaker on women and the economy, Bridget has spoken to audiences on nearly every continent and was named a top keynote speaker for 2020 by Real Leaders. In fact, that's how I actually came across you, Bridget.
That's right.
She is also a frequent guest lecturer at universities and MBA programs. And most of all, she is a proud former student. Please join me in welcoming Bridget Brennan.
Thanks for that great introduction, Richard. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with my fellow Ags.
Yes, it's awesome to have you. Now, I want to make sure to let everyone know this is a very special edition of the Full-Time MBA and MS Business Special Guest Speaker Series because it is really part of the Maze Mastercast for the first time. So I'm actually going to be handing it over right now to my colleague and friend, Ben Wiggins, to run the show. Ben?
Thanks very much, Richard, and thank you to first to Bridget for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to Richard for getting all of this put together. We are sincerely grateful for both of you, and we are honored as the Mastercast team to be able to participate in this process. Thank you also to all of the students, staff, faculty, and friends who have joined us on this call. It is our pleasure, and we are very grateful to be here. Bridget, I will start by asking you, as Richard mentioned, as the founder and CEO of Female Factor, you study women for a living. How did that come to be?
Yes, it's not a typical job, and you can imagine the kind of jokes I hear when I explain to people that I study women's consumer buying patterns. Mm-hmm. But it's a fantastic and such an important line of work and line of study. You know, I should say that from my earliest beginnings, I've come to this subject quite naturally because I grew up as the oldest of 5 sisters with no brothers. So I grew up in a predominantly female household, but my father was a career military officer. So mostly we lived on military bases. And back in the 70s and 80s, military bases were very masculine worlds. And it was when I was a kid that I really started to become intrigued by gender differences. And I would really notice the behaviors and the etiquette and the patterns on base between most of the people in uniform, who at that time were predominantly male, and then the other people who were running the households and many of the social and educational activities, who were the women. So from a very early age, when I was young, I found this fascinating. Fast forward years later, and I'm working for all sorts of big clients and Fortune 500 companies who are all primarily targeting women as the primary consumer, because I worked across retail businesses, consumer goods, and in those categories, women are the absolute dominant consumer. And I couldn't help but notice, and it took me years to act on my instincts, but I was always noticing, wow, these companies are all targeting women. They depend on women for their fortunes, but women are missing from all the senior levels of management and all these critical decision-making areas like R&D and product development and marketing strategy. And I would find myself sitting in these conference rooms, often being maybe the only woman in the room, and there would be a product launch debrief. And everybody would be sitting around the conference table, wringing their hands and saying things like, why didn't we hit all of our goals with that product launch? Was our distribution strategy off? Was our pricing wrong? And for so long, I would sit in those meetings when I was young in my career and think, could it possibly be because you were depending on women to come out in droves and buy this product, but no women were involved in any meaningful way in its creation? So I thought about that, but it took me several years to act on it and seize the opportunity.
So now with your work at Female Factor, I'm assuming that, you know, what you're doing is filling in many of the gaps that male-led companies have failed to bridge. What do you think is the biggest gap between these companies that you've mentioned previously and their female consumers? What's the biggest problem that they're not solving? Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, you know, we could talk about this for hours, but you know, I've been working on this subject now for almost 20 years. And if you had asked me 20 years ago, when I was just starting out in 2003, I started this program called Speaking Female at the company I was working for. And we could talk about that later. But if you'd asked me in 2003, by 2020, do you think that women will still be only 7% of Fortune 500 CEOs and largely missing in many ways from the management teams and the boardrooms? I would have thought, no, by 2020, we will have made huge strides, but we really haven't. The numbers have been pretty static up until even the last couple of months. In fact, the numbers are so small at the highest level that every time a woman takes a job as a CEO or steps down, the percentages move all over the place because the numbers that we're starting with are so small. So what I feel is missing is one, the representation. There's a lack of inclusivity, and we all know that this is a hot topic, and everybody, you know, the most big companies are working on strategies to become more inclusive. But I also see that there's sometimes a lack of understanding about how women and men can approach the consumer marketplace differently. And I often will hear in meetings, people use the word consumer over and over again. How is the consumer changing during COVID? What's up with consumer spending patterns this quarter? But consumer doesn't get to the heart of the matter, which is that women are the engine of the consumer economy, driving between 70 and 80% of all consumer purchasing through a combination of buying power and influence. So understanding the reality of life in the marketplace for modern women is key to successfully serving them and succeeding in the consumer market, which is very competitive.
What are the most common myths about women as consumers, most common misunderstandings?
Well, I'd say that some of the big ones are still with us. You know, stereotypes are slow to die. That is something that I have found out. They are
no question.
So there's still this impression that, you know, women just spend their money on things like shoes and handbags and sparkly things. I get those jokes a lot. And the reality couldn't be further from the truth. You know, 41% of households with kids in the United States have a mother who is either the primary or the only breadwinner. Women's incomes are vital to the economic security of their families and households, and vital to the economic health of countries the world over.
Without a
And
doubt.
so women are the dominant consumer, but are not often viewed with the level of seriousness with which they should be viewed.
You also talk about the fact that women have a multiplier effect on sales. Can you tell us and our listeners a little bit more about that?
Yes, the women's multiplier effect. This is a big deal. So the reason that women drive so much consumer spending is because around the world, in virtually every society there is, women are the majority of primary caregivers for both children and the elderly. And it's in this role of primary caregiver that women are out in the marketplace buying on behalf of lots of different people. You already know that moms buy on behalf of kids and women buy on behalf of spouses and partners, but that's just the beginning. Women buy on behalf of neighbors, their businesses, their elderly parents, their in-laws. You know, when you add all of this up, you get to this multiplier effect. And the multiplier effect really means that women are not just buying for themselves, but buying for multiple constituents. And B, if you have a happy customer who's a woman, she is the gateway to everybody else in her household, as well as in her social and business networks. Because when women find a great business or a great deal or a great resource, this is often a topic of conversation amongst their female friends. Women drive word of mouth publicity. I like to say that women are the original social network, because when they find a great resource, they often feel like it's nothing less than their duty to pass on that information to their friends in the spirit of being helpful, because most women know that their female friends are in the same position they are in terms of provisioning and procuring for the household. So when you have happy female customers, they can be like rocket fuel for a brand.
I have seen that happen firsthand. Your first book, Why She Buys, had a strong focus on marketing. Your new book, Winning Her Business, is focused on the customer experience. By the way, congratulations again on being nominated for the 2019 Business Book of the Year. That's incredible. Why is customer experience such an important topic to address right now? And what are the most important ways in which the customer experience is being addressed?
Well, that is a great question. That is such a great question. Well, there's two things I'll say about it. First of all, customer experience is the new frontier for winning in the marketplace. I mean, we all know if you want to buy a frying pan, how many places could you buy? If any of us wanted to buy a frying pan right now, how many places could we buy from? So how do we determine where to buy? In an increasingly commoditized marketplace, customer experience is the new battleground. And because women dominate consumer purchasing, women are on the receiving end of most customer experiences, good and bad. So understanding how do women define a great customer experience is job one.
So when you're talking about that battleground, I don't want to assume too much, but are we talking about referrals and reviews? What are the most obvious ways in which the expression of the consumer experience manifests in the marketplace?
Well, reviews are a hugely important part of a customer journey now. You know, so many customer journeys start out with the reviews and looking at how many stars, and then reading, you know, a lot of people have their different methods. You know, I will interview women and they'll say, I'll read the top 5 positive ones and then I'll read the top five negative ones. And, you know, a lot of people have different formulas for how they weed out reviews that they might view as being fake or suspicious and try to get to the nut of it. But reviews are absolutely important in the age we live in now. But customer experience is really everything from marketing to a customer's values to their omni-channel experience, whether you're buying from them online or in brick and mortar. And here is what is wild. It is 2020. We have never had more ways to communicate with our customers. And yet, great customer experiences are still the exception and not the rule. Well, why is that? That is what this book attempts to find out and address.
It's a compelling question, and you have some interesting case studies in the journey to answering that question. The most eye-catching one Richard mentioned earlier was the Minnesota Vikings. How does a professional football team deliver a great customer experience, particularly with women?
Yes, well, women make up about half of all NFL fans, and everybody in the football industry is aware of that fact. And the Minnesota Vikings have an amazing management team, and a few years ago, they built a brand new world-class stadium. And it's interesting to think about a football game as being a customer experience. But that is how the Minnesota Vikings view it. I mean, it is an experience. And if you're a fan, a fan is really another word for customer. And so they built a truly inclusive fan experience within the stadium. And I'll give you 3 examples. And I think these examples show that when you create an experience that makes women happy and delights women as customers, you're usually making all of your customers happy, including the men too. So, it's the proverbial rising tide that lifts all boats. So a few things that the Vikings did in their stadium is, for one thing, everybody likes to wear merch to a football game, right? A&M, you're wearing your logo, you're wearing your hat, you're wearing your hoodie, everything's got A&M emblazoned on it. And so, they made sure that in their stores in the stadium, they had an equal amount of women's merchandise and men's merchandise. Now that sounds like a small thing, but actually for women, it's a big thing, because for years, women would have to buy like a men's size small in sports gear. And now it's being created for women. Secondly, they built throughout the stadium private nursing suites for nursing mothers. And they created these suites so that any mom who wanted to bring her baby but was breastfeeding would have a comfortable and private place to do so. And then they made sure that fan, while she's feeding her baby, could actively watch and listen to the game so that she wasn't missing anything. So that's really cool. So here's what's cool about that is, even if you're not a mom, even if you're not breastfeeding, even if you're not a woman, you walk past those rooms in the stadium and you think, wow, that's pretty thoughtful. Somebody thought about all the fans here. And then finally, they created a sensory room for people who might have autism or other sensory challenges, that they could go and have a break and spend some time in a quiet area, because football games can be very loud. And so their ultimate goal was to create a truly inclusive experience for every fan, so that every fan feels welcome and comfortable and recognized.
That's a brilliant move. And I'm assuming that where that particularly gets to women is that they're more likely to be caretakers of someone in that situation, in this third scenario you mentioned.
Well, yes, but also, a lot of families go to games together, particularly in a state like Minnesota, where being a Vikings fan is a family tradition for a lot of fans that goes back generations. So often the whole family will be coming to a game, and it caters basically to everyone.
Okay, that's great. Really happy to hear that. By the way, if you for our listeners and friends who have joined us, if there's anything that you would like to ask, feel free to type it into chat. And then once we get done with the primary interview, Richard, if you'd like to select a couple of questions that we could pass along from the audience to Bridget, I think that would be great. Does that work for you? Great. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about online buying. You write about how e-commerce has changed women's expectations about brick and mortar buying. Can you share a little bit more of that with us?
Yes, thanks for that question. And our expectations have shifted so much. In ways that we don't even realize. We become more impatient with things when we can't find them at brick and mortar stores now. Uh, you know, a lot of things have changed because of COVID. So I will say that a headline for the COVID era brick and mortar shopping experience is that people's expectations are that it will be a safe shopping experience health-wise. So that has been a very specific COVID expectation of brick and mortar retail. And when before COVID, when I would interview women about, what are your expectations in brick and mortar around things like safety and security? Usually safety meant things like lighting in parking lots or lighting in half-empty parking garages or making sure there's enough light over the store entryways and exits. That meaning about what is safety and security in the age of COVID, it's all about being safe from the coronavirus. So I've seen that shift, but broadly, how has e-commerce shifted our expectations? It's that with e-commerce, let's go back to that frying pan example. If any of us were to embark upon buying a frying pan right now, which we could multitasking do while on a Zoom call, I'm sure we've all been there doing something else. We know exactly what's gonna go down in this purchase before we even start. We know where we're gonna look, we know we're gonna look at reviews, but we know what we're gonna find. And then when we buy it, we know exactly what's gonna happen. We're gonna get the immediate confirmation, we're gonna get the thank you, we're gonna get the delivery info when it's shipped, and then it arrives conveniently at our place of home or business. And we're recommended other items that we might like to go with that item. Now imagine we're looking for this frying pan and we just pop into a store. The difference is with the e-commerce experience, there are almost no variables left. We all know what's going to happen. When you walk into any brick and mortar environment, the variables you encounter are endless. Are they going to have your product? Is it going to be in stock? If it's in stock, is it the right color or the right size? Is there anybody there who will help you? You encounter all these different variables, which for brick and mortar is a challenge, but also a huge opportunity.
Sure.
Because it's an opportunity to discover things you didn't even know you wanted or needed, and to have positive social interactions as pre-COVID, and sensory engagement, because it's interesting to consider that you can still really only engage two senses online: sight and sound. That's it. But within the four walls of a store, you can engage sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and maybe have a really cool and interesting interaction with another human being. So those are the cards I think that brick and mortar will be playing, particularly in the post-COVID age, because definitely this is going to lead to an evolution in brick and mortar retail experiences.
I'm fascinated by this multisensory possibility. Are you aware of any examples that you could share with the group in terms of how retailers are using or any kind of commerce is using smell, taste, and I mean the interaction with another person, obviously that's all over everywhere, but how are they leveraging this?
Yeah, I think you're seeing it in big ways and small ways. Like right before the pandemic hit, I walked into a bike shop. I was looking for a new bike. And the first thing the bike shop owner asked me was, "Would you like a cappuccino? Now, I can tell you, I was not expecting that. But with self-serve coffee machines, it's easier than ever to offer some element of hospitality, which we humans have had as part of the marketplace for, over 1,000 years, maybe.
Sure.
Hospitality is part of what we humans do around the world, and you see it in big ways and small ways. I got offered a cappuccino at a bike shop, but then, a big brand like Nordstrom has rolled out bars and restaurants in the men's departments of some of its stores. And we all know that you can find Starbucks inside of a lot of different stores. So I would say food and the sensory delight around food is the first area that we have seen retail really grasp onto in terms of branching out into these other sensory opportunities in IRL, in real life shopping situations.
Right. We've talked at several points in this conversation about how COVID has changed things. How are women's buying patterns changing as a result of COVID?
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
Well, women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Lean In and McKinsey came out with a study that last week that shows that something on the order of 3 hours extra per day are being spent by many working women since COVID on activities like childcare and household labor.
Mm-hmm.
3 hours a day. Times 7 days a week. And many women of young children are balancing distance learning with either trying to maintain their own job or look for a job or go out to a job that requires childcare, but maybe their childcare options are no longer available to them. So what we're seeing right now is that women simply have less time to engage in the marketplace. And something we understood even before COVID hit is when there's less time to shop, the expectations and the need for ease and convenience go up. It's an inverse relationship. The less time there is to shop, the more you expect ease and convenience. And I think what we're going to see is a revolution in what does convenience mean beyond just fast delivery. Because pretty soon, fast delivery, you could already argue that fast delivery options are available, in a mainstream manner. So if everybody's convenient in that way, what's the next level of convenience? What does convenience mean beyond just time? What does it mean in terms of ease? I think we're going to see a very broadened definition of convenience as we come out of the pandemic.
You think for a second. Trying to decide if there's anything I want to follow up with there, but I think that's a great answer. You were a journalism major here at Texas A&M. Now you're a CEO, a public speaker who gives talks around the world. You've written 2 business books. You're a contributor to Forbes. Was this what you imagined you'd be doing back in your Texas A&M days?
No. So I was a journalism major, and when I graduated, I thought I was going to be one of 2 things. I was either going to be a travel agent or I was going to join the military. And in fact, when I was at A&M, I took the Air Force Officers Candidates Entrance Exam.
Oh.
So, but really, behind both of those things, joining the military and being a travel agent, my goal and my one desire was to see the world. And that is what I really wanted to do. And so my senior year, I was walking down the journalism building, and the name is escaping me right now of the journalism building. And I saw a poster on the wall, and it said, "Interested in working abroad?" ? And there was some like 20 something looking like, they had a backpack over their shoulder, and you could pull off a phone number. And I spent $80 and I got a visa that would allow me to work in Britain up until 12 months after the date of my college graduation. So I graduated. A couple days later, I moved to London and I got a job as a temp, because they just gave you the work permit, but you had to find the job. So I got
Yeah.
a temp, and I got a job at the coolest temp agency. It was run by 2 women, and the temp agency specialized in only sending you to ad agencies. So all their clients were ad agencies. And my very first day as a temp, I was sent to Leo Burnett, London. And it was like the heyday of Leo Burnett. They had the Tony the Tiger account. They had the Global McDonald's account. And I walked through those doors and I felt all that creative energy. And I thought, this is what I want to do for my career. So what that sort of taught me in hindsight, we're always under so much pressure to have like a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. And my plan when I graduated A&M was that I just had to find a way to see the world somehow. And once I did that, just by getting to London, of course I didn't see the whole world, but that led me to what eventually became my career. So sometimes I think one goal at a time is okay, because that will lead you naturally to whatever your next goal is.
Love that. Love that. And obviously, we're all grateful here for our Aggie experience. I wanted to ask you, as probably the final question from me is going to be, what are some of the biggest things that you learned as a student here that have stayed with you? Maybe things that surprised you during your student experience that you feel like have been particularly helpful later on?
Well, A&M was such a wonderful experience for me. And I know it is for everyone, but for me, it was very different because being a military kid, I went to 3 different high schools and I went to a million different schools before that. So I was always the new girl, always new girl, new girl, new girl. But when I went to A&M and I started as a freshman, I was on the same footing as everybody else for the first time in my life. We were all new. And that was such an incredible feeling of liberation for me that I will never forget. And my friendships there have stood the test of time. So one of the biggest things I took away from A&M was an incredible group of friends who I'm friends with to this day. But the other thing that my experience at A&M taught me, well, 2 things. One, A&M really exposed me to the world. A&M is such a global place that I was always meeting foreign exchange students from different places. We were always having visiting professors from different places, and it really just whet my appetite. There were so many interesting people who were introducing me to so many places in the world that at that point I hadn't even really thought about. So A&M, with its global view, really gave me and deepened my global desires and global view. And then the other thing A&M did for me was I never did become a journalist, but I was a journalism major. But I have spent most of my career writing. And the fundamentals of what I learned at A&M, the writing classes, the classes on, how to deliver presentations, have been the core foundation for my whole career. I mean, I remember my journalism classes. If you spelled somebody's name wrong, you got an automatic F. No matter what, you could have written the most brilliant piece in the world. You spell somebody's name wrong, it was an automatic F. I have been a champion speller ever since. And actually understanding how to pronounce and spell somebody's name in customer service is very important.
Sure.
And so I think, for all of you on this call who are in school right now, you have probably no idea what your life is going to be like 10 years from now from a career standpoint. And probably that's because what you're doing 10 years from now doesn't even exist yet. And maybe it doesn't exist because you're the one who's going to invent it. But what I feel strongly about is getting a great education like I got at A&M. Even though I've used it in so many ways I couldn't have predicted it, it has been the foundation. And I kind of can't wait to see where it leads me next.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Bridget. And I will turn it back over to Richard for some Q&A.
Yeah, excellent. Bridget, in all of our conversations, I didn't realize you were a daughter of an Air Force parent. I'm an Air Force brat myself.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, that is fantastic.
I also grew up going, from different Air Force base to different Air Force base.
Oh my gosh. Well, actually, technically my father was Army, but I took the Air Force exam.
Wow.
But same thing, same thing.
Absolutely, no doubt. So Aaron Buchanan, one of our full-time MBAs, asks, with the growth of e-commerce, we have also seen a growing abundance of high-quality products. If the customer has access to a dozen high-quality products that are all well-reviewed, what can a product team do to make their product stand above the rest?
That's a great question.
That's a fantastic question. And you have basically hit on the heart of why the marketing industry even exists. It is to differentiate a product in a crowded space by giving it meaning and putting values behind it and telling a story around it, a story that you want to be associated with. And I think the most classic example of a story you want to be associated with would be the continued success of the Nike brand in a very crowded space. It continues to tell a story about its brand that people want to be associated with. And so even though there are dozens of athletic shoes you could choose from, the big brands in that space, including Adidas, really work hard to tell stories, often through celebrity athletes, that people want to be associated with. So I think it all comes down to powerful, emotion-driven marketing.
Bridget, I do have a follow-up to that. In terms of learning about storytelling as it pertains to business, obviously Donald Miller's Building a Story brand is a fantastic resource for probably anyone. Do you have any other recommendations for how students, staff, faculty alike, or business people of any kind, can learn more about the process of developing your client's story? Their client's story, sorry.
Well, I think so much of it comes back to consumer research. It is surprising to me how much in-depth consumer research still is not done as much as you would think it would be, and as frequently as you think it could be. But if you are constantly in tune with the marketplace in terms of their values, their wants, their needs, and you understand that, and you understand how you can actively help enrich consumers' lives, then I think that helps unlock the keys to what the brand should be about. Not that a consumer is going to tell you what kind of marketing campaign it wants, but you're going to be able to create something that resonates so strongly that people know that they love it, but they don't even know why they love it. They know love it.
It's like the end of a good movie. You just sit there in silence for a moment.
And I think, people want to experience great marketing. I mean, nobody wants to be sold to. Like, we always feel like, we can't be sold. I make my own decisions. Come on. But, there is a reason that people tune in every year to see the Super Bowl ads, They want to be entertained. They want to laugh. They want to be moved. Maybe they want to be brought to tears. I always think that, what people typically oppose is bad marketing, but people really love good marketing.
Yes, absolutely. Bridget, how can our friends on this channel and anyone listening afterward, how can they follow what you're doing? How can they buy your books? What's the best way for them to keep up with you?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking. Winning Her Business, my newest book, and Why She Buys, my previous book, which is more marketing centered, are available wherever books are sold. I have a column called Why She Buys on Forbes.com. I'm very easy to find there. Let's link in. I'm Bridget Brennan on LinkedIn, and my website is bridgetbrennan.com.
Fantastic. Go ahead,
I'd like to
Richard.
ask a question if you don't mind, and we do have a couple new questions coming in. I did want to ask you real quick, what's your outlook on the Christmas season for shopping? Because,
It's gonna
well,
be
I mean, you know, COVID's really taken, you know, really, you know, the retail sector has just gotten beaten up, and I mean, my guess would be from an outsider, although someone who really loves shopping, by the way, I didn't tell you that. You know, I mean, it looks like it'll be if it's possible, a much heavier e-commerce shopping
Oh, for
season.
sure. Oh, for sure. Well, I think first of all, it's going to be very interesting to watch what happens this holiday season. And arguably, the holiday season has already started. I think that, you know, a lot of people are not going to be spending money traveling. So does that mean that they might spend those discretionary dollars on different purchases for their homes or their households? I think people are going to be inventing new traditions, which may spark more marketplace engagement. And I'll give you an example. I interviewed a woman just a couple of days ago, and she said that her whole house is strung in Halloween lights and a Halloween lighting display. And I said, oh, you have a Halloween lighting display? And she said, yeah, it's, you know, we're starting a new tradition. I mean, usually we only do this at Christmas, but our kids are so bored that we did it just to, you know, give them something to do. They participated in it, and it makes the house seem more festive when we're still, you know, they're doing remote school every day. So now they've started a new Halloween tradition of lighting their house and going out and spending money on lights and decor, when previously they would only do that around the Christmas holiday. So a lot of people can't travel, and a lot of people are really thinking about their homes. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of spending happens. Of course, there's still the uncertainty of when is all this going to end? Am I going to be able to keep my job? There are so many people who are out of work. So of course, all of those economic factors are hugely important as well.
Yeah. Kathleen asks, how do you think social media, fashion bloggers, and influencers have changed consumer marketing to women?
Well, some definitely have changed it a lot. What's a bigger word than a lot? Substantially, significantly,
Humongously.
humongously. Thank you. That's a good Texas size word. You know, some industries are more influencer specific than others. We all know the beauty industry is very influencer driven, as is the fashion industry, but we're seeing it go more broadly into, you know, homewares, all sorts of consumer products. It's been a huge shift. It's been a huge shift. And I think marketers are always keeping their eye on, you know, who's emerging, who's maintaining their followings. And it's a little bit of art and science, but I think there's a little bit more science being put behind it now in terms of making sure large followers of an influencer are legitimately that large number, and that type of thing. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's huge. It's huge.
Another question from, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Another question from Aaron. These questions are really good, by the way. As the storytelling becomes key to capturing consumer attention, corporate marketing is more often stepping into discussing political or social issues that their consumers care about. What do you see happening with this trend in the future? Is this going to become expected at some point? Is it going to be more common? What do you see happening with this as time goes forward?
Boy, these are all great questions. I mean, obviously we're already seeing it happen. And over the last couple of years, there's been a big uptick. I think that we're going to see two things happen. One is people are going to be more interested in where brands stand on issues like we've seen this year that are external to the marketplace, so maybe political in some way. But then I also think that that people are also going to be interested in, are companies walking the talk internally. For example, if a company is sponsoring International Women's Day, for example, or running an ad that is saluting the women of the world, but they have 0 women on their management team and 0 women on their board, I think those things are going to start to come to the surface more and be commented on more in the public space.
Great thoughts. Jorge asks, does there exist a threshold where especially large companies such as Nike, Adidas, Microsoft, Apple, start to take a less is more approach in letting their historical brand recognition speak for itself, trying to avoid noise that would eventually become counterproductive to the development of their product?
I think that's a great question. I don't think that getting involved in public affairs is right for every brand, and some brands have no desire to engage. But I think that with the pace of new entrants to the market in every conceivable category, including technology, brands can't afford to rest on their laurels at all. I mean, look how the world has changed so much in just 6 months. I mean, the pace of change is relentless. So I think even the biggest brands have to be constantly reinventing themselves in some way to stay ahead of the market.
Richard, you had another one?
Yeah, so Xiao Yang messaged me a question for you. What's the core drive to finish your first book? Please give some suggestions for those people who give up in the middle of writing.
Okay, whoever you are, send me an email. Let's talk on the phone. I would be happy to talk to you about the book writing process because it is a bear. I'm writing my 3rd book now, which is a funny book, by the way, because, you know, I'm in the mood for some humor these days. But it's hard to motivate sometimes if there's not somebody putting a deadline on you. So it's all about becoming your own master of your own deadlines. And I'm happy to talk you through that. Give me a call, send me an email, we'll set up a call.
I can definitely agree with that.
I'm convinced everybody has a book in them.
Yes, and that's definitely true even in TV world. Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with some of the most successful writers in television, and they love the whooshing sound that deadlines make as they fly by. So but you have to impose that kind of structure, you know, that really, you know, really creative writing. You have to get some kind of structure on it. So I definitely agree with that.
You do. I mean, believe me, sometimes I'm waiting for the muse to strike and it does not strike. And I try to be disciplined and write anyway, but I'm not always as disciplined as I would like to be, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
Work in progress.
Yes. Richard, I think you had one more.
I just have one more. You touched on something that I noticed as well, a trend that's been taking place during COVID. You had mentioned the individuals paying attention to their homes, things along those lines. I've noticed that you even notice it with a lot of the advertising that's happening. People are spending more time at home. Certainly Lowe's, Home Depot. There's been a number of these things. I just wanted to get a little bit more like input from you on like what you've been seeing with respect to these kinds of trends, given the fact that, you know, COVID is really changing our life in many different ways. I mean, from not traveling as much, although I will tell you, I've noticed recently those ads for, you know, for resorts and things like that starting to pick up again. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
The home, Richard, I think it is the area to watch over the next year. Not only have so many people had to reconfigure their homes for the adults working in the home, as well as if there are children working in the home, and then people are spending so much more time at home. They want to find ways to make it more as pleasant as it can possibly be. But, you know, I remember working with home builders years ago when the hot new amenity was a home office. Well, now, who wants only one home office? I think what's going to be fascinating is to see how home design changes as a result of this. Not just the furnishings, but how homes are actually designed at the architectural level.
Last question from Wenjing. Could you give our MS Business and MBA students some, if you had, let me start that over for our cut later. If you had one piece of advice to offer our MBA and MS Business students for career development and life progress, what would it be?
Okay, another great question. It would be to follow your instincts and to listen to them. It can be the hardest thing in the world to listen to your instincts. Actually, let me take that back. It's easy to have instincts and you can be listening to instincts, but what's hard is acting on your instincts, like having enough faith in yourself to act on your instincts. You know, I thought about starting a business that was focused on the study and market research of women, which is what my company is all about. I thought about that for years. I thought, well, you know, surely if it was such a great idea, there would be companies like this all over the place. And am I missing something? Because why aren't more people doing this? Even coming up with the idea to write a book, I thought surely somebody would have already written a book on this subject. And I wish I had listened to my instincts a little bit earlier. So I would say listen and act on your instincts, and who knows where it might lead you.
Brilliant. Bridget, unless Richard has anything else for us, I will begin to close us by saying thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your insight, your energy. This was so much fun.
Oh, thanks. It was a blast for me. Thank you all. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to meet you all. And let's be sure to link in. I'd love to stay connected.
All right.
Yeah,
Richard?
yeah, no, I just want to thank you as well, Bridget. I mean, it's been as fun as I thought it would be. I mean, you're just such a fun person to be around. I was privately joking with a few of my colleagues saying, man, I want to go shopping with her.
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
On the
no,
other
man.
side of all this, Houston
Yeah.
has great shopping. We can go to Houston.
Well, look, seriously, and I want Ben to finish this up because, you know, it's his show today. But just the same, I did want to really thank you and really appreciate you spending time. I realize, you know, being one of the top keynote speakers for 2020, you know, your time demands, you know, a lot. So I just want to thank you for being willing to join us. You know, really appreciate it.
Yes.
And
And thank you to our friends who joined us, students, staff, faculty, friends from elsewhere, you know, across the world. Thank you to everyone who is part of this discussion with us and for the great questions that you added to this process. So my hat's off to everyone on this call. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Bridget.
bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.